And off we go. Episode 4 of That Atleti Podcast. I'm Jeremy Beren of Into the Calderón. I am joined by my good pal Ricky Menéndez over in Madrid, Spain. How are you, my friend?
Hello, how are you? How are you doing?
Well, I was doing better before I watched the Atletico game today.
Oh,
We're recording this. We're recording this Thursday afternoon, Central Time, my time in the United States, and very late for you in Madrid.
yes, and we just saw Barcelona win the La Liga trophy. I think they've been the best team overall, and it's I think it's a deserving trophy for the Barcelonistas. So just a brief congratulations to the Barcelona team.
Yeah, begrudging congrats to them.
Yes.
But they do deserve it. 28th league title, and they really have been the best, certainly in the second half of the season, but I think they have been the best team all year. They played the best football. The Lamine Yamal goal tonight, a postage stamp goal to win the title. Absurd. He's 17 years old and doing these things.
He knows how to keep a cool head. Apparently he knows how to stay humble. Those are the traits of players that have long and successful careers. Hopefully we'll be able to snatch a few Ligas and other titles away from him, but it seems like he's ushering a new era of talent, and they just keep coming from Barcelona and from Real Madrid to make things as complicated as ever for Atletico.
They just keep coming, man. Like we had to deal with Messi for so many years, and then I get like maybe a year and a half off from him, and then this kid shows up.
Exactly.
And then this new group of Barcelona kids shows up. It's incredible. They just churn them out. It's like a conveyor belt. It never stops.
Yeah, and I mean they went through a terrible financial crisis, and it's been a blessing in disguise because they've churned out all this truckload of talent in all these kids. They were joking the other day in the dressing room saying we're a school playground because that's how it feels. They're so damn young. So yeah, let's hope we find the kryptonite that they're still vulnerable defensively. Although it's a very bad night to talk about vulnerable teams defensively. But
maybe
yeah,
so.
Yeah.
A real Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde week for our beloved Colchoneros, Ricky. A 4-0 win over the weekend against Real Sociedad, where Alexander Sørloth made La Liga history, scored the earliest hat trick and the fastest hat trick, completing the job in the first 10 minutes, 46 seconds. The hat trick itself was scored in 3 minutes, 57 seconds as Atletico rolled to a win over La Real. And then from the high and the euphoria of that home win came the low of the loss at Osasuna, which we just watched a few hours ago.
But there's a pattern there. I don't know if you feel the same way I do. It's just Atletico struggles to perform away from home, and that's been the undoing for the team in terms of their La Liga aspirations. You can't win La Liga if you're not a regular team. If you're if you're not able to perform well away from home, you're just doomed. You're going to navigate through La Liga, but you're not going to aspire to win the La Liga title. The typical English league average that they always say of get a draw away and win at home, it doesn't work anymore. That's not a stat that works in modern football, and you have to come away with the expected wins against the teams that are not, that don't have the same potential as yours, and today was a win that Atleti should have brought home at least the point to secure the Champions League position, and I'm just seeing a lot of players letting go. Very, very borderline unprofessional, and it's very annoying for the fans. I know that Simeone always takes the blame and takes the fall for the players, but I think that many of these players are they're digging their own grave from a sports perspective of their future prospect as Atletico players, because they're just proving to be unreliable when the going gets tough, and it's that sad. It's a very sad feeling to see that there are several players that you just can't rely on them, and you're going to have to go to the market and look for replacements, and not only address the many needs that Atletico has as a team. You're going to also have to replace pieces because they're just proving to be unreliable in the tougher stretches.
Which I think entering this season, you weren't really, at least I wasn't really counting on having to go to the market to replace someone like Samuel Lino this summer, but I think that's going to happen.
That's a clear player that is being pointed out for good reasons. I'm very, very disappointed with the defensive performance in several of these matches. I think that we already talked about Jose Maria Jimenez being like pointed out and singled out for a poor performance. I think that Lenormand today can add to the group of underperformers.
Oh man,
we've been struggling with Galan's performance or with Nahuel Molina's performance in other parts of the season. It feels like there's just so many holes to cover, and the water just keeps popping in and making new holes in the wall, and it's frustrating and it's annoying and it's also disappointing.
What do you make of Robin Lenormand's season, Ricky? I feel it's been a little difficult to evaluate because of the injury that he suffered in the derby in September. He was brilliant against his former club, Real Sociedad, at the weekend. Misplaced only one pass. And then today, another kind of weak and ineffectual performance, especially in individual duels and with defensive positioning.
Yes, and very handsy, very playing in a way that in other matches they can cost you a penalty or more. Yep, I think he has a good excuse for having a below average season, and we just have to wait and see. I think in the case of Lenormand, what he might lose is the capacity to convince the coach from the get-go that he's a starter, and it feels like he's fallen a little bit in the rank of priorities in the starting lineup for Atlético Madrid in the future. If Atlético Madrid are able to sign players, we've already seen this week how it's going to be a very tough market, because once they know that you have to go out and spend, it's going to be a money war, and lots of wealthy rivals are going to try to snatch the players that you're after. We're already seeing the struggles to sign Gyökeres, and how Andrea Berta has almost sealed the deal for Arsenal and moving him to the English Premier League. And we just have to wait to see what's going to happen with the defense, with the spending. If Atlético Madrid are going to rely on domestic talent, they're going to bring the likes of Baena and other such players that have been linked to Atletico in past seasons and in the previous months, or if there's going to be some surprise, some names that haven't popped up as frequently as the ones that everybody's talking about. It's a matter of waiting and seeing. I think that it's going to be a very strange off season because of the Club World Cup, and it's going to probably delay signings until after the Club World Cup ends. And it's a dangerous championship. I don't know if you've stopped to think about this. I would like to hear your opinion about it. If Atletico gets knocked off very quickly in that competition, it's probably the best case scenario, other than winning and going all the way and coming through with a victory, because otherwise you're just jeopardizing your preseason, the season planning, and everything. The sooner you can get your players on vacation, the better. And here it's a matter of, is this new competition going to disrupt planning for the following season? It seems to be a hidden danger that teams don't have a good way of accounting for.
There's a lot of uncertainty because this is uncharted territory with this expansion to 32 teams. And it's very exciting. And it's very cool that Atletico are a part of it. Simeone has been talking about it in recent press conferences, that it's validation of the work that has been done over these past 14 years with Simeone and his staff.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I think you're right that the earlier Atletico can get out of the competition, the better it may be, but you miss a potentially serious financial windfall, and you don't want like Real Madrid getting that windfall. That would be just the worst case scenario. There already is unrest, unease, uncertainty, anxiety about what Atletico are going to do this summer, especially amid reports that Madrid have already tied up Dean Howson from Bournemouth and the national team. Trent Alexander-Arnold, Xabi Alonso is coming in. Alvaro Carreras, the Benfica left back, might be signing for them. So that's just going to make everyone a bit more jittery, on edge.
I mean, if the market starts to move very quickly, it's going to make the player transfers, just the prices go up. So we can expect the asking prices of clubs to rise as a consequence of seeing that some teams are starting to spend a serious amount of money, and Atletico only has that much money to spend, and it has a lot of needs to cover. So
yeah, there's only so much money to go around, and we have probably 6 or 7 spots we need to fill. We have 6 or 7 players who are going to come in this summer, just like last summer, and several more who are going to leave. I want to know how you see Sørloth right now, and how you see the casting, I guess, the open casting for the number 9 going this summer. Gyökeres seems like he's a bit of an impossible dream, given the price and the interest of Arsenal and the money that they have. I personally don't see Sørloth as a starter. I mean, it was great what he did against Real Sociedad. It highlighted his best qualities. But then you have this performance against Osasuna where he's snatching at chances. And just, to me, further proof that valuable squad player, great to bring off the bench. Maybe that's not a role he wants. And I personally think we should be aiming higher in terms of a starting 9. How do you see his situation?
I agree with you on what the expectation should be long term. But I also think that there's just so many other positions that are priorities that there's a very big chance that Sørloth will just remain as a squad player if he's willing to stay, which could really dynamite Atlético Madrid's planning if he just comes to at the beginning of July and says, I want to move on because I want to play more minutes, which is why he has moved on in the past from other squads. I have the feeling that the important match that he sealed the other day and the amount of appreciation that he's received from the club has been a turning point for him emotionally. It's funny how a single match can affect the way a player feels on the team, and I think that he, at the end of the day, he wants to feel appreciated as a player, and I think that there has been it's been the official Sørloth Appreciation Week during the Real Sociedad match, and all of those post-match interviews with the scoreboards highlighting the 4 goals and the photoshopped Thor meme Atletico posted right away as Thor Loth as the Avenger. We already have 2 Avengers. I think that all of this affects the way the player feels he's being appreciated by the fans and by the club. It might have a decisive factor, because I really saw him in the things that he said as being really, really appreciative of the moment and really taking it all in. And I don't know if there's going to be another player that is within Atletico's reach and that is a clear improvement over Sørloth. If there isn't a clear improvement over Sørloth, I would do as much as possible to keep the Norwegian on the team, because it's a sure bet for many matches, and we still see the limitations, but it's a kind of player that you can rely on.
We've had conflicting reports this week on the future of Ángel Correa, Ricky.
Yeah, I think he's ready to move on, and it feels amazing to say something like that because he's been in the club for forever, quite virtually. But it's not the first time. I don't remember exactly when it was. Maybe the first year of the Metropolitano or the last year of the Vicente Calderón. There were lots of talks of Correa moving on before he signed his new contract. And I remember being at Segovia during the preseason. There's like a stage of the preseason that they go up into the mountains to Los Angeles San Rafael, which is like a small town owned by the Hill family. That's why they go there. And most of the resorts and many of the houses developed there were developed by the Hill family. That's where Atlético Madrid normally does their pre-seasons in the last 30 years. And I was standing next to the crew from La Sexta, and they were and the reporter that was there was addressing the camera and saying, "See that player? That's Ángel Correa. Don't film him because he's out of the club. He's completely out of the club." This is almost 10 years ago. And we don't need that footage because we just want to focus on the players that are staying. There are rumors that he's already been transferred. He's just here because it's a formality, and he just stayed and moved on and signed a new contract. And so we've heard these negative reports about Correa before, and it's almost constant every summer that Correa's not happy. Correa wants to move on. Correa wants more playing time. Quite frankly, if he's got a season left, I would play it out. If I were him, I don't think any other team is going to be as relevant in your career as Atlético Madrid is. It could be a last hurrah to try to fight for a trophy like Griezmann is going to do, which I think for sure Griezmann is about to enter his last season or his last two seasons, and that final effort to come away with another trophy, or I think that it would fit the narrative of the Correa story with Atlético Madrid to go out with a bang and not just fizzle midsummer and find another destination, another team. It would be sad to see that become the end of the Correa story for Atlético Madrid. If he were to move on, it would probably be a good idea for the club and for the player to talk about it during the week, building up to the last Metropolitano match, to give him a proper sending off.
Yeah, 100%. He's been so important to us for so many years, and not many players have the mentality or the willingness or the ability to pull off what he's pulled off in this super sub role. There's a 15-minute compilation on YouTube of all the goals he's scored as a super sub. That's not normal. That's really cool. It's something very special about Angelito Correa. And is he a bit of a hothead? Yes. Is he petulant, or especially early in his career? Yes, he was, but he's always had Simeone's backing. Simeone has always been his biggest supporter, his number one fan, and that's been huge. I think that's the big reason why he stayed for so long.
You gave the perfect adjective for him, the super sub. He's the perfect squad player, the perfect player that is reliable. He's sealed decisive wins. The last goal that sealed La Liga was scored by Ángel Correa. He's part of Atleti history. I think that people think that his legacy is not going to be as solid just because of that not being a starter status that he's held most of his career. I think that regardless of whether he's been a starter or not, his legacy is going to remain, and it's probably going to be appreciated after he's left the club. He's a sixth player that has played that in number of matches played, and the amount of of talented players that are behind him in that top 20 list is just amazing.
Yeah.
And to stack him up in terms of historical players and his historical importance in the contribution to the Simeone era.
I want to talk to you about our midfield, Ricky, and then we'll move on to our final
What
two
midfield?
segments of the show.
What midfield? It was like, where are they?
Didn't see it today. Saw it against Real Sociedad. The 100th appearance for Pablo Barrios over the weekend. And over the first few episodes of the show, we haven't spoken a whole lot about Barrios, who over the past probably 18 months has become probably my favorite player in the first team. I love this kid.
Really?
He got an assist on his 100th appearance for the club. He was liberated a bit. These past two games with Koke starting, we got to see Barrios in a more advanced role where he should always be playing. But because we haven't had a 5 in how many years? Since Rodri left? He's been playing as a makeshift 5, and not even really makeshift. He's been quite a good 5, but it's clear to me that his best role is as a more of an advanced playmaker. Jekyll and Hyde week for Pablito as well, because he gets the assist for Sirlot's first goal against Real Sociedad and then suffers a probable concussion against Osasuna, colliding with Marcos Llorente's hip or his leg. Is Llorente like made of iron or something? Is he made of steel? Because I didn't really see what happened at first, but I saw he was motionless on the ground. And like,
it was
what's happened here?
To perceive when in real time, but you could really tell. Because now La Liga has this way of blocking out any kind of incident that might have to do with concussion out of respect for the players, which is good for the dignity of the players. But unless there's another channel of information that is coming to the narrators, they're just left in the dark of what's going on because the cameras just pan away from wherever the situation is going on. So you really don't get to see replays that are very clear about what's happened in the first place, and you don't get to see the importance of those situations. Fortunately, it does seem to be a minor knock to the head, not properly a concussion, and at this hour of the night, the game was only a couple of hours ago. Hopefully it's not going to have any long-term consequences. The protocol is protective with players, and I'm very happy that finally they got serious about concussions in La Liga. So he's for sure going to miss the next game, which I think are going to feel dearly, because they're just missing they're just missing the needed talent in the midfield. Koke is playing more minutes than he should, because he's way past his prime. Rodrigo de Paul has good days and not so good days. We're going to have to pull some players from secondary roles and maybe get Conor Gallagher there or other expect for Giuliano Simeone to step up. I think that Pablo Barrios is one of the sure bets for the future. One of those players that you're going to have for many years ahead. We were talking in the Spanish podcast that we do, Maneras de Vivir, with his coach for Real Madrid, because I don't know if you know this, but Barrios went through the Real Madrid system, and this coach he's like a real vocational youth coach, because he's worked for all of the canteras. He's worked for Alcorcón, Getafe, Rayo, Leganés, Atlético Madrid, Real Madrid, all of the big youth development schools, and he's had the opportunity of coaching Rodrigo when he was coming up through the ranks of Atlético Madrid. And when he switched sides to Real Madrid, he got the opportunity to coach Barrios. And it was that week that Barrios had received the red card, and he was really being heavily criticized by many fans of being very hot-headed and not being mature enough. And this coach was talking about the actual age that Barrios has. He's outperforming the expected performance for a player of his age. The headline that he left is, I think that he thought that only Rodri was as talented as Barrios in Spain in the midfield position, and that Atletico Madrid had the privilege of having the two most talented midfielders playing for their team in the last decade, and that they had to take care of Barrios to make sure that he stayed for another 10 years playing for Atletico Madrid. So yeah, that was a headline that we walked away with, talking to his coach from the U system, and I really think that Pablo Barrios is a kind of talent that we have to secure and build around.
Yeah, an absolutely fundamental pillar of the next several Atletico teams, we hope.
You were saying before, I don't know if we were already recording or we were just chatting before we pressed record. What do you think about Samu Lino and Rodrigo Riquelme, for example? On the other, it's like the other side of the coin, right?
Yeah, I think they're both gone this summer. And with Roro, obviously a player from the academy who showed a pretty good level, I think, last season. The final goal in the Copa del Rey tie against Real Madrid was a highlight of his season. But he had some Feyenoord. He was man of the match in the Champions League when we played in Rotterdam, that 3-1 win in the group stage. Yeah. He was fantastic that day. He's obviously a talented player, a quality player, but he's never really had a fixed position. The lineup, the formation change hasn't helped him or Lino. Moving from the 3-5-2 to the 4-4-2 hasn't really done either of them favors. But I think with Riquelme, I see he's raw in several aspects that a 25-year-old player should not be so unpolished in his decision-making. Mm-hmm. The technical ability is there, but the decision-making is not at an elite level. The physical traits aren't at an elite level. He doesn't anticipate or read the game at the level that you need to be able to read it if you're going to stay at this club. Lino has really surprised me this season. He's really taken a step back. We need a player like him. We need someone who can unbalance an opponent on that flank. We don't have a natural dribbler in the team. That's just become abundantly clear in the second half of the season that is one of Atletico's major flaws. The guys at Atletico Stats posted this graphic a couple of weeks ago, like of the top dribblers in Europe. Giuliano Simeone is Atletico's top dribbler in terms of like quantity, quality. He ranks 180th among all European wingers in dribbles per game. That's not very good. Lino was supposed to step in for Yannick Carrasco when he was sold to Al Shabab last year, and he got first crack at that left wingback slot and ran with it. I think he had 16 goal contributions in all comps last year. What impressed me about Lino last year was not just his offensive contribution, but he worked hard defensively. The work rate was there. The endurance was there. The willingness to track back and be dutiful defensively was there. And that was really impressive to me. So entering this season, I figured he would be one of our more important players. And I don't know, man, he just hasn't been consistent. He hasn't been in form. The revolving door behind him at left back has probably been a bit of a killer for him, which, that's not really his fault, but today's game is a good example. I didn't see good decision making from Lino.
You went to the raw data, which paints a very clear picture, but only based on the feel you get watching the games. You would say that Lino and Riquelme feel absolutely replaceable in the squad, and that Simeone has been very, very important this season. But his position in the future should be more of being an add-on to the team and not a fundamental core player. More of a roster kind of player that you can rely on in certain matches. A little bit what we were talking about, Sorloth's role in the team, but your core talent is something that you have to bring. You have to bring new talent aboard to really step forward and not stay behind in those stats that you were talking about.
With Giuliano, he started, I think, the last 32 or 33 games in a row, which is frankly unbelievable. And it speaks to how good he's been this season. Very pleasant surprise, but there's no competition for his place, like none at all. Like if you want his competition is Llorente, who's our starting right back. And if you want Llorente to play in his position, you got to start Nahuel Molina or Cesar Azpilicueta, who came in at left back today instead. So it's again, you have to plug all these gaps, and the squad building, we've talked about how subpar it has been in previous seasons and how it has reared its ugly head again in the second half of this season. The club has a lot of work to do this summer. Very clearly, the club has a lot of work to do.
And let's see if they're able to bring everything that the club needs, because there are so many needs, so many holes to fill, that you have the feeling that there might not be enough money to go around and fill all those gaps. I don't know if you can hear the fireworks. There's fireworks right now. It's midnight in Madrid, but it's a patron saint of Madrid. It's San Isidro. So like something very big here in the capital city, and there's like fireworks a kilometer away from my home where the Pradera is. It's like really loud. I don't know if you can hear it from your side.
No, I actually can't. There was a lawnmower going outside my window last week when we were recording. I couldn't hear it at all.
We've got good noise canceling technology.
Yes. Listen, we're on the cutting edge on That Atleti Podcast, man.
Exactly.
We received a query from a listener, and this is a topic I want to go into just a little bit here before we do our history corner for the week. A topic I'd love to learn a bit more about is, why is it that so many Spanish clubs seem to be cash strapped? It seems like just Athletic and Real Madrid are in sound financial shape, but everyone else is teetering on the verge of collapse at times. Just a deep dive into how the league got into this situation.
Bilbao.
Yes.
I wouldn't say that much, but they're just very, very poorly managed. It's just a matter of how many poor decisions go around, and the lack of accountability. I don't know if you've been following all the drama in Sevilla and how they've been. The thing is that the ownership of the majority of these clubs are in hands of people that don't necessarily have sufficient business knowledge, and they're just wealthy people that some of these teams want the owners want to make a profit from the team, or use it to leverage reputation or influence, and the football priorities or the sporting priorities are not top of their list. So it's as simple as that. Atlético de Madrid, for example, we were talking about the accusation, but it's not a matter of opinion. There was a trial against Atlético, his owners. He was sent to jail for basically using Atlético Madrid to launder money from the City Hall of Marbella. And it's not the only case. You have Valencia being sold to a foreign investment group that afterwards forgot to invest in football talent, and still expects the results. Teams that are properly managed are the ones that didn't have to turn into Sociedad Anónimas, into incorporated sports companies, are Real Madrid, Barcelona, Athletic Bilbao, and Osasuna. Those are the four survivors of the tremendous purge that it stole clubs away from the fans as being the rightful owners of the club. But also when the clubs were owned by the supporters, there wasn't always proper accountability of what the president that was appointed would do with the money, and there's just been a lot of misspending. And I think that Spanish football is very similar to Italian football in the way that the spending responsibility has been taken into account, and it's something that other leagues like Bundesliga have complained about, that it's competitively unfair for them to have to live under economic constraints while the rest of the teams are just spending beyond their limit and falling into debt and not paying off that debt, and constantly increasing that debt while they continue to mismanage. Long story short, I would blame it on the presidents and the owners of these clubs as being mostly terrible in the financial management aspect.
One of my follow-up questions was, I kind of know the answer to this already, but I was going to ask if this is like a uniquely Spanish thing, which in a way it is. Another topic I wanted to broach was the idea of La Liga's financial controls, which are very strict and have been strict for several years under the presidency of Javier Tebas.
When there was a law it passed that made clubs have to reduce their debt, and the management of clubs had to be personally accountable for the debt that the club has. So they had to back the debt with their personal wealth. When that happened, two teams just didn't do anything about it, Sevilla and Celta de Vigo, and they should have been relegated 2 divisions to Segunda B, but since the entire cities went on strike, they paused the law and they left La Liga with 22 teams instead of 20 for a couple of seasons. So if you create a law to corral the teams into being financially responsible, and when it goes into effect, the 2 teams don't do that, and instead of getting punished or getting the full weight of the law exercised over them, we just kick the ball forward or kick the problem into the future and continue allowing to these teams to be financially irresponsible. You're not going to create a culture of financial responsibility. These teams have played outside of the borders of financial responsibility since forever. This has been going on since the 80s. So right now, La Liga has made a better attempt of trying to get the teams to be more responsible from the financial standpoint, but they're still a long way from being responsible. And La Liga exercises this control sometimes in an unfair manner. We've seen the Dani Olmo situation and how they bend their own rules or they break their own rules depending on the team. So they're going to be very inflexible with Sporting de Gijón or Alavés, but they're going to be very tolerant with Barcelona. Barcelona was allowed to sign players despite being above their financial fair play figures, just because it was Barcelona. And there was a ruling that basically stemmed from the government saying, yeah, we can't let Barcelona just have to fire players because they can't pay them. Well, we just let them do it this one time, which is the umpteenth time that something like this happens.
Yeah, when Real Betis try to register players, they're told no, and Betis are always like every summer there's some report that they're on the verge of financial collapse. But when Dani Olmo's registration is in danger, the government says we're treating Dani Olmo like he's a worker, we're treating him like he's an employee, and we can't deny him his right to work. And you can bet the same thing would happen to Real Madrid if they ever found themselves in this situation. Would Atletico get that kind of treatment, Ricky, at this point, having been in the top 3, having won a couple of titles under Simeone?
When the Gil family was stripped of the management of the club for a few months, the chapter we talked about, there was a court intervention. There was a court appointed officer that became like the de facto president. And what he did was basically open the books, see that they were a disaster, and they were overpaying for players. Some of the contracts were not fully legal. They were paying money under the table to players for different agreements that they had reached with the agents and all that. This officer just started selling players and to cover this financial gap and bring it down. I think the justice system has been very tolerant with Atlético Madrid. Because it was the first one to reveal the size of the problem of Spanish football. And the thing that Atlético Madrid has that makes them live a comfortable super debt is the fact that they have a payment plan. They were the first to enact a payment plan that works for Atletico Madrid and makes them viable as a club, and that's something that, for example, Valencia lacks, and that's or Betis lack, or Sevilla lacks, and that's why they go through the financial struggle season after season. You won't see that Atletico de Madrid in those dire straits, but because they got into such financial trouble that they had to settle with the revenue service, with the social security department, on a payment plan year after year, and they did that 20 years ago. So they've been paying off the debt, chipping it away for a very significant portion of the Simeone years. The debt was not reduced and it increased, especially with the move to Metropolitano. Miguel Ángel Gil and Enrique Cerezo's personal wealth increased exponentially according to the Forbes list. So there was a lot of uproar about that situation happening. Now that the ownership is considering moving on from Atlético Madrid and selling the club, one of the requirements to sell the club is to hand over a healthy club from the financial perspective. So they've gone back to being very strict with the payment plans, being very strict about reducing the debt. I would say that Atletico Madrid is in a good position because they got themselves into a very bad position. That's the only reason why Atletico Madrid are in a better position now than other clubs. And we don't hear this drama about Atletico Madrid accounting, because when drama ensued, it was disproportionate, the levels of drama.
If Atletico under Simeone were ever to miss the Champions League, I think you would start hearing about accounting drama again, because the Champions League accounts for a third of our budget every year.
Atletico Madrid is living on a constant inflation path, like making sure that everything is growing season after season. If Atletico Madrid weren't on a constant growth path, it would be in very, very serious financial trouble. So for all of those that want to swap Simeone out for another coach, that's another reason. Simeone delivers. He gets the team qualified, gets he secures the money for Miguel Ángel Gil and Enrique Cerezo. It's no wonder that they want to hold on to Simeone as a coach.
Yeah, he offers what like very few managers around the world can offer, which is a guarantee. And we're
consecutive qualification for the Champions League. No, I think it was
one of only 6 teams. One of only 6 teams to qualify for that stretch of time. 2 of those other teams play in La Liga, Barca and Real Madrid, which is part of the problem and the problem in quotes, but part of the unique place Atletico occupy in La Liga. And a result like Thursday's at Osasuna was frustrating. And I think in the second half of the season, Simeone has shared some of the blame for what has gone wrong. And it's not just because he gets up in at the podium and says, today's defeat is on me. I'm not preparing the team well to play games away from home. But he's still a guarantee. Like, no wonder Gil and Cerezo want to keep him around. It is what is very frustrating is when they hide behind him, is when they let Simeone take the abuse from fans, from the media. That is what is very frustrating and contributes to this division that you and I have discussed on previous episodes.
I think that's what people should try to avoid, falling into the mistake or into the trap of following the talking points of late night sports shows in Spain that believe that there has to be a division and there has to be a criticism from within of Atletico fans because Simeone still hasn't delivered this or hasn't won that or has gone so many years without a trophy, because it's a fake narrative and it's a narrative that's been shaped over the years. It's been designed by people that are not Atletico supporters and that do not have Atletico's best interest in their heart. So it's buying into a narrative that is clearly designed by Madridista journalists or journalists from the sphere of influence of Real Madrid. Atletico was a comfortable rival in past times. Now it's an uncomfortable rival, and Simeone must fall. And that's a new narrative, and getting Atletico supporters to buy into that narrative that Simeone is not doing enough, and Simeone is mediocre or a bad manager, is just something that's been part of the mainstream media for a long time, because Simeone is just uncomfortable as a rival. He creates an uncomfortable environment for other teams to have an easier path to success.
For today's history corner, Ricky, let's go back in time, as we like to do here, to the pre-Simeone days. And I want to talk to you about the man whose name is on that shirt behind you, Kun Aguero.
Yeah, I decided that I was going to bring one of those jerseys that we probably all have in our collections, the unwearable ones. This is literally my favorite jersey because of the design, because of the player. A player that ushered in so much hope in the post Fernando Torres era, because he was brought onto the team just one season before Fernando Torres signed an agreement with Liverpool, and that 2006-2007 season under the helm of Javier Aguirre, the period of Javier Aguirre is kind of successful. For the standards of the time, it was a team that won more than it lost. Always had European aspiration, but hardly ever delivered at the end of the season. So it was a period that was felt good after that relegation period, because it felt stabler than what we had of the constant carousel of coaches. Kun Agüero was basically under the direction of two coaches. One was Javier Aguirre and the other one was Quique Sánchez Flores. Under Quique Sánchez Flores, Atletico became relevant again because they were able to pull off the amazing Europa League win in 2010. And Kun Agüero and Diego Forlán are part of that mystique. And what is funny is that a player as relevant in Atletico at that time in Atletico history has gone down as one of the biggest traitors to Atlético Madrid. And I think it's just that he was terrible at managing his press and his image and the message to the fans. It's a little bit like Forlán. I don't know if you know that Forlán left the club in a very controversial way, and he wasn't even playing at the end of his season. He got into a very bad relationship with Quique Sánchez Flores, and Kun Agüero at the end of the 2010-2011 season, 2 seasons after this jersey, he basically just said that he was never going to play for Atletico again. And it was basic, and that had to do with a conversation that he had with Enrique Cerezo, where he was promised to be able to move on to another club, and he basically was very disrespectful with the jersey in his way of saying that he wanted to pursue a move to the Premier League. And because of the way he said it, fans just started to hate him very intensely. It was a period where it was very difficult to feel competitive. Atletico were struggling to try to create something lasting after the very brief period of touching glory with Quique Sánchez Flores, because the La Liga seasons were quite underwhelming in general. There were a couple of Champions League participations, but nothing out of the ordinary. I think that the last time that Agüero and Forlán played Champions League for Atlético Madrid was eliminated by Bolton of all the teams. It doesn't feel like a powerhouse has kicked you out of Champions League. So As a summer, I would say that Kun Agüero was very poorly advised. It would have helped him very much to understand that players create legacies or they destroy them at record speed. And the same way as Courtois has lost all respect for the team that gave him the opportunity to be a relevant player in the biggest stages, and has become one of the most hated players. Before Courtois, Kun Agüero held that doubtful honor of being the most hated player for Atletico fans everywhere. Which never and it's curious that Atletico never had the opportunity of playing the Kun Agüero team because I think that as a home game, he never played for Barcelona against Atlético Madrid in the Metropolitano or in the Calderón. I'm not very sure. He
only played, I think, 6 games for Barcelona before because of the heart problem. He had to retire, and Atletico never had the fortune of playing Manchester City while he was there over the 10 years that he was there, which is a bit weird.
And the second thing that I'll tell you is the amount of hate is equivalent to the amount of talent. Whenever I talk to my younger brother about Kun Agüero, we were very big Kun Agüero fans. I don't think we've seen anybody as talented as he is play with an Atletico shirt. I mean, we haven't seen Luis Aragonés play. We haven't seen I don't know, Irueta or some of the big names in Atletico history, but he was extremely talented, more talented than Fernando Torres, more talented than Futre, more talented than Falcao. All of them great players, but more specialist players than anything else. Kun Agüero was a real deal. There was a moment during his Atletico career that you really thought that he was on his way to becoming the best player in the world. And he's always had this kind of double life where he was very, very talented, but not very responsible about his entourage or the people that surrounded him and the lifestyle that he led, and probably underperformed. He had the opportunity to be a generational talent and settled for only being an extraordinary player, which is a shame. I mean, today we're saying Lamine Yamal's first La Liga title. I'm pretty sure it's not going to be the last because of the attitude the kid has. It's very, very difficult. For me, it's absolutely impossible to hate on the kid because he just has all the traits that you want to see in the legendary players. He has a talent, but he also has that kind of emotional intelligence of knowing what to do and doing things right. He may taunt a little bit. He may have his fun, his teenage antiques, because he's still a very, very young kid. But you can see he's going to be a big name for the next decade. And with Kun Agüero, it could have been the same, and unfortunately it wasn't. And his short-lived career in Atlético Madrid had a little bit of to do with the times of Atlético Madrid. There was no stability. So another thing, I think that Kun Agüero is also a cautionary tale for those that think that Simeone is going to step down. There's going to be another coach that is going to step into that role, and that players are going to continue to flood in Atlético Madrid and play for whatever coach comes, and that's just fooling themselves, because Atlético Madrid doesn't have that economic power of saying, come here and I'll pay you whatever is necessary to convince you that you're going to be successful here. Atletico was rejected this summer by Dovic, of all players. That is good player, but I mean not top tier talent. I feel very sorry for the Kun Agüero story going so sour, and I think that there should be some way of finding a path for Agüero to have some kind of redemption at Atlético Madrid.
Could have been worse for him. It could have been Joao Felix.
It could have been Joao Felix. My daughter has a Joao Felix jersey. I can hang that up next to this one. She really asked me for it, and it was like, okay, I got my my kid a Carrasco one and my daughter a Joao Felix one, and they were out of the team before they even started to use it. So it was like, okay, that was money well spent.
This is why I tend to avoid getting players on the back of my Atletico shirt.
Exactly. Very, very wise of you.
It's so transient. I got the home shirt when we won La Liga in 2021. I had it personalized to say Campeones 21 on the back. Nice. That's the only identifier I have on the back of any of my Atletico shirts. No way.
I tried to go for players that I feel have already left a legacy. So the only one that I've bought in the last 5 years with a name on the back is a Koke jersey from the red one, the 120 anniversary one, which I think is something that is going to be a good purchase forever. It's not a whim. It's not it's a player that, of course, Koke is going to be a player that's going to be part of Atleti history forever. So it makes sense to have that jersey. Yeah,
I would get a Koke shirt. I would get a Diego Godin shirt.
Diego Godin,
yeah. Probably a Felipe Luis shirt.
Felipe Luis.
Probably.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, but again, it's that matter. When Felipe Luis went away to Chelsea and came back, he was also in that blacklist of players. There are fans that have never forgiven Felipe Luis. Like, there are fans that will never forgive Griezmann for walking away to Barcelona. I mean, fans of every club are in general very, very very, very short-tempered in terms of feeling betrayed. They want to move on from the player the moment he plays a bad season, but they don't accept that the player wants to move on from a team that is not giving them enough. I think it's not a fair deal for some of these players.
It's an unfair deal for sure.
If Kun Agüero teaches us anything, it's that the players have to be intelligent about how they communicate and how they want to be remembered.
Any thoughts on the Betis game this weekend before we get out of here? That's Sunday at the Metropolitano. I don't know what the atmosphere is going to be like.
Atletico fans are very forgiving with their team. They have to do something. They have to do something really messed up to have a bad atmosphere. And from the sports perspective, and it's almost a mission accomplished. Atletico are 1 point away from sealing the deal of securing the third position. They should have done that today, but I'm hoping they'll get the job done and come away with a win, which would be a way of bringing some closure. And I don't know if there's going to be any big news regarding Correa or any other player, but it would feel appropriate if there's going to be that kind of decision being made, to give the fans the opportunity to say goodbye to one of the names that has been so fundamental in all of these years of the Simeone tenure.
Yeah, Stefan Savic got that treatment last year in the home finale, which was a loss to Osasuna.
Yes.
Terrible 4-1 game. So, yeah, it remains to be seen what the deal is with Correa. Betis have been playing pretty well of late. They're into the Conference League final, which is great for them. First ever European final.
They're going to be super distracted with the Conference League final. So
I'd bet.
It's a perfect way to come away with a win.
What do you think of Antony? What do you think of his loan at Betis? He's been pretty electrifying.
But, I mean, I think that's probably... I don't want to sound disrespectful with Betis in the way I word this, but I think it's a perfect fit. It's a low stake kind of move for Antony. He really needed a fresh start, and I think his success is linked to the expectations at Betis, which are way below where he comes from. And it would make sense for them to tie their future together and keep Antony on the team, because he's a good player. It's nice to have that kind of talent in La Liga.
A healthy Isco is nice to see too, especially when he's not wearing that white shirt.
He's incredibly I don't know how old he is, but he's incredibly resistant to aging, apparently, because I mean you can see Modric and Koke just suffering season after season to perform decently. That also shows the demands of playing for Real Madrid, Barcelona, or Atlético Madrid versus the demand of playing a step or two below. Being able to lose your good amount of games and still be in the mix for your more modest objectives of the season. So yeah, it's Isco has never been one of the players that I especially hated when he was in Real Madrid, but I've never had special appreciation for him because he played for Real Madrid for so long. So yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. Totally fair. Well, win, lose, or draw, Ricky, we will be back here next week to talk about it.
Oh yes, and I will be going to bed very soon because it's really late here.
I'm Jeremy. That's Ricky, and we will catch you all in the next edition of That Atleti Podcast. Adios.
Adios.